real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Rome is with you. We are coming up to Remembrance Day, and I've got a number of guests lined up to talk about service and sacrifice. We are going to talk about their experiences in training and deployments, the memories, the people, and the impacts of service. To help me, I have co-host John Simpson here. John is a U.S. Army veteran with over 40 years of practical experience. He is an instructor with Snipercraft Incorporated and a research historian who has authored several books on the fundamentals and advanced tactics of marksmanship and sniper skills. I always get all those big words mixed up. Also, John was previously on this podcast in season 2, episodes 23 and 45. So go check those out to get his story. And our guest today is Sergeant Ed Eaton. Ed descends from a family who served in the U.S. Marine Corps. He joined the National Guard in 1965 while he was still in high school. Then he moved on to the U.S. Army, where he trained as a radio operator and later a sniper. In 68, Ed deployed to Vietnam and joined the 9th Infantry River Raiders. He left Vietnam with 3 Purple Hearts, 3 Bronze Stars with Valor devices, and a number of Army Commendation medals. And that's some of the stuff we're going to get into today. Ed's story has also been featured on several shows and podcasts. He has been recommended for the Medal of Honor and has been inducted into the Army Sniper Hall of Fame. Since retirement, Ed has become an author and artist. Ed's autobiography, if you want to pick one up, is called The Mekong Mud Dogs, the story of Sergeant Ed Eaton. So welcome, John and Ed.
Honored to be here.
Good morning, and a big shout out to my Canadian brothers.
Glad to have you both on here. This is, for John and I, this is one of the last recordings to kind of wrap up this series. So it's, I'll say it's been a pleasure having him on right off the bat here. And I'm glad we could get Ed in because we didn't know if we were going to fit everybody in, but we managed to make the schedule work. So thank you, Ed, for being flexible with the dates and times and taking some time out of your day to come talk with us.
My pleasure.
So maybe we'll kind of start at the beginning with you, Ed, and we'll walk through a little bit of your life. So if you could tell us about where you're from, growing up, and kind of your path to service.
Well, I was raised in the Pacific Northwest, mainly Northeast Oregon, Southeast Washington. And my family on my father's side were mountain people. They had a small ranch, small farm up in the mountains. And my father joined the Marine Corps shortly after Pearl Harbor. So as a child, I recall living in Camp Pendleton. So I was a little familiar with military life. But Vietnam, of course, came around, and that changed everything for me. I actually joined the National Guards in high school, more as a vet with some friends. 4 of us joined the same day. And really wasn't all that familiar with Vietnam at that time. But as it popped up and as the whole thing grew over there, kids started talking about this, that. And there started to be people against the people for, and I really felt like I needed to get over there and see what's going on before I had anything really to say about it.
How old were you at the time when you joined the Army? So you were in the Guard in 65, and that was high school. 68, you're deploying to Vietnam. So
yeah, I was actually 17, had to have my parents' signatures. So.
Wow.
And I went active duty at age 19.
Wow. Man, in contrast to today, seeing what some people are doing at 19. So if we could go back a little bit and just talk about you said your dad joined just the Marine Corps shortly after Pearl Harbor. Do you have a family lineage through the Marine Corps? From what I understand, did anybody kind of push you in this direction? Like, hey, you should look at joining, or was there kind of no pressure at all? Or did they try to talk you out of it?
Well, I had pressure to go into the Marine Corps, but I really wanted to be a medic. And my father had taught me to dislike the Navy uniform. so, so wanting to be a medic, I joined the Army thinking that they surely would pick up on me, but they had different ideas as to what MOS I should have.
Right. Just for the benefit of the listeners, if you want to be a medic in the Marine Corps, basically medics in the Marine Corps are Navy corpsmen. So that's why Ed couldn't be a Marine and a medic at the same time.
Okay.
At any rate, I found myself in infantry training, and I at that point I just thought, well, let's just get it over with. So away I went.
So can you talk a bit about the recruiting and just, the initial steps when you're thinking about going into this? It sounds like you're pretty dead set on going that direction, so it wasn't a hard choice. When you go through recruiting, what does that kind of look like in the mid to late 60s?
Well, there's no recruiting in my instance. I just went right through. Actually, I was in the Guards, then I went into the reserves. And I just went to my CO and said, "Hey, I want to go active duty." That's how that worked out. So,
okay.
I didn't deal with recruiter at all.
And from there, so you just go in, they send you right off to kind of your basic training, and that's where it all starts?
That's correct.
What is, where do you go for that?
I had my basic training and my infantry training both in Fort Lewis, so I didn't have to travel far.
And what does training look like when you first start out?
I think it really is your basic training. The Army's trying to teach you how to act and march and how to stand and shut up, and it goes on. And then infantry training is really where they get serious with you. And thank God I was in what was called, anyhow, the old style of training. One of the last, how should I say, old style infantry training, basic training units in the nation, from what I understand. But I just thought all the basics, rifle, it was marksmanship, throw all the crap you can on your back and march 26 miles, things along those lines. So
yeah,
a lot of it was teaching one how to, the camaraderie, if you will. But at any rate, I felt pretty comfortable with what I had been taught. And I had a little bit of an advantage in that I had been sleeping on the ground on again, off again, ever since I joined the Boy Scouts. So a lot of the infantry stuff wasn't all that new to me compared to let's say somebody from the big city. Mm-hmm. They had a little more of a difficult time relating to all that.
Hey, Ed, in regards to the infantry training, I wanted to explore something that you said where it was like you're like one of the, talking about the old style versus the new style, and you were like right there at the transition. I mean, what's your understanding of the biggest differences between the way that you went through infantry training and then what followed? So what was the difference between old style and new style to you?
Well, you don't really realize it at the time, but when you later on and speaking with friends that went through, a different system and a different force, you realize that things were different. For example, we weren't allowed to go anywhere, period, outside of formation. If you were in formation and you had your drill instructor with you, that's where you went. But you could not leave your company area, period. You couldn't go to a PX. It had to be done for you. I think it was a little tougher grind. the it, it just seemed to be, a little nastier, if
Yeah.
you will. The drill sergeants had a little more leeway on how they treated you.
Right.
Were you going kind of from, is this like a 4 a.m. to 11 p.m.? Like, are your days really long when you're going through this training?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's part of what they teach you how to deal with is sleep deprivation, of course.
Yeah.
Going to be an infantryman. If you're going to be an infantryman, you better learn how to deal with that. But I said it was a little bit easier for me. I was an athlete. I had played 6 years of football. Uh, I was an avid hunter. Um, I didn't have any problem putting on some mileage on my feet, and as such, I was made a squad leader, which actually makes it a little tougher because they would use you to demonstrate the next exercise or whatever it was, and then you'd have to go through it for a score. But so sometimes you had to do things twice, and everybody else had to do it once. But,
You sound like a person who really thrives in those environments of teamwork and the camaraderie, which seems to be kind of a common theme from all the people I've talked to, outside of maybe one of the guests I had who kind of described themselves as a bit of a loner, but everybody else has been like
right.
teamwork. They've played some sports growing up, and once they get in, the word camaraderie always comes back. So, the interesting theme.
Yeah, you go from whining, how did they end up in the infantry? Everybody else is learning how to be a truck driver or a mechanic or whatever, and so you're at that point and you feel pretty low life. You understand you're about as low as you can go when it comes to being in the army. But once you graduate as an infantryman, that's when the pride starts. You realize, hey, I've done something you haven't. I'm at a different level than you are, and
100%.
it stays that way throughout. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely going through the grind and being the grunts. You build a camaraderie that other places don't have because they don't have those shared experiences and they don't go through the whole suck together. They don't go through the hurt.
yeah.
So you're off to training. You're 19. Is most of the people that you're going through with you, are you finding they're coming from similar backgrounds, same age, like they got kind of the same experience, or are you getting like just a wide variety of people in there?
Yeah, it's pretty much a wide variety of people. A few draftees, uh, and we had one unique platoon. It was a judge in Idaho decided to wipe out a boys' home, or actually, I should say, a juvenile detention home. he he gave them the option of going in the army and getting an honorable discharge
Oh wow.
with an expunged record, or stay in and go to the big house when they had 18. So we had an entire platoon that already had their own pecking order, and so the army just doubled up on everything. You had two drill sergeants, you had two NCOs helping out. So it was kind of an interesting show to watch all by itself.
But do you know what happened with them or how that turned out at all?
Yeah, they got dispersed just like the rest of us. I ran into a few of them in Vietnam, in fact, but no, they went on, and some of them got different MOSs, and but from what I could tell, I actually visited one after we were both out, and most of those guys did pretty good. It was the right thing for the judge to do for them.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's I mean, hey, that's a unique solution. So I'm all for that. At least somebody's trying something different. As long as it worked out, I mean,
Well, that actually used to be a lot more common than you would think.
mhm.
Yeah, there's
I think you're right, John.
there's a lot of documented cases where a judge was telling somebody it's like, well, either prison or the Marine Corps or the Army or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, exactly right. And but that was usually on a personal basis. So I think what was unique about this is there was literally 60 guys from one And they definitely had their own pecking order, and the Army had to change that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you'd have some different dynamics coming in and different ways of operating or going about your business than what the
Yeah.
Army
Well, you
might.
can't have an infantry platoon with a gang initiation. So,
Mhm.
Exactly right. And the guys that were head of the pecking order all of a sudden found themselves dealing with their squad leader, somebody of what they considered to be of lesser quality. So it was kind of fun to watch.
Is that even a thing in the Army back in that day? Like you hear now that there are gangs, like actual full-on gangs in the military. Was that even a thing back in the 60s?
Well, if it was, I wasn't familiar with it.
Mhm.
We were being trained. We didn't have no time to be a friggin' gang or anything. So
Yeah.
they kept us busy, too busy for thoughts along those lines.
Hmm.
I did see some people in the rear in Vietnam gather. Uh, that might have been because of their job or their race or whatever. But other than that, I really didn't see much of it.
yeah, back in that time, from what I understand from back in that time, you didn't really have a lot of challenges to authority that you see now, because now it's just like, well, what are you going to do to me? And it's like back then, like even in the mid to early 60s, you would still have it where the company first sergeant would like bring you into his office, lock the door, and then bounce you off of the walls and then plug you back into the formation. And all you could do was just lump it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely different than nowadays. Wow.
One of the ways that drill sergeants would get around some of the physical stuff is, for example, my drill sergeant came to me and he says, Eaton, when we have formation in the morning, I want to know that man understood what I said. And I thought, what the hell are you talking about? How are you going to look at a guy and understand that he understands? Then it finally hit me. He needed a black eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had to pull a blanket party on the guy.
Yeah, I kind of read between the lines.
Yeah.
So you're off at training, and how long is it through to get through training? And you started as a radio operator, but then you moved to sniper before you deployed. So it sounds like a lot of stuff happened pretty quickly. Is it kind of a quick time frame in there?
Actually, I was made a radio operator in Vietnam. I was strictly an infantryman, and
Mm.
we were trained. All of us were trained in radios to an extent. But once I got into my unit, they made a decision as where I was needed. And the first spot they felt I was needed was as an RTO for a squad leader, and that's what started that. I went through just about every job in the platoon except for one, and that was machine gunner. There's no way I wanted that damn thing on my back.
Yeah. Then you move into being deployed. How long of a time frame is it from when you first get into the Army and then you're actually deployed? We're talking like a year,
Oh no, less than that.
even
In my
less.
case, it was about 9 months, but I had a hernia that needed to be repaired, so that was a whole different story. But I can't remember. John probably has a better idea what the length of basic training in AIT was back then than I recall even.
Yeah, back around that time. Well, I mean, because things kept on changing, but figure on it was like 8 weeks for basic combat training, and then what everybody calls basic, and then depending on the year, you're looking at like 7 weeks or so of infantry training.
Is this just because the war is going on and they just need to pump people out of there, like just get them through and get them over there kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much, because it's like there was and then when Ed was in, it's like you didn't have the personnel crisis that that later developed in as a result of Vietnam.
Hmm.
So yeah, that would be that would be like covering the history of that would be like a show in itself. I mean, um, the army wound up having to create a program under Secretary of Defense McNamara where people that were originally judged too low in the mental capacity department were now eligible to serve in the army.
Yeah.
And we were, yeah, it was like the pejorative for them was McNamara's morons. And when I enlisted in the army in '77, NCOs were still talking about the negative impact that they'd had on the army.
Wow.
So, but yeah, so it was, figure on, 8 weeks for basic, 7 weeks for infantry. And the thing is, it's like back then, I mean, you got to remember things that at that time, we didn't have a lot of the weapons that we have now. We didn't have the communications now. And it was a learning curve. And the thing is, it's like, at one, you have a different kind of basic training for, stuff to cover when you're coming out of a war like the Korean War, World War II, or when you're going into something like Vietnam, and they're basically making it up as they go along.
Okay. All right.
One of the things that surprised me was I recall when we graduated from my infantry training that the average years of schooling for my entire company was right at 14, meaning the average person had 2 years of college,
Mhm.
which
Wow.
which was totally,
Yeah.
totally unique to compared to some of the past wars where um, John was saying the guys with lower abilities
Yeah.
were stuck in those slots. Not that the Army didn't do that to an extent, but they realized, I think, about that time that the infantrymen had to think about a lot more things than you needed to have your math down if you're going to be calling in artillery. If you're going to do this, you're going to do that.
Hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, interesting.
And for Ed, as you're coming through the training, or even just a bit before that, leading up to it, did you have anybody that you're really looking up to, or that kind of was maybe a mentor, or are you just forging your own path?
Well, not while I was in, I didn't within, other than your drill sergeant,
Okay.
the son of a bitch that you hate, but at the same time, he's the one you want to go to war with.
Yeah.
But
Why do you think that is? Like, what?
well, I think because you end up appreciating your discipline, and your training is what it amounts to. You don't like getting up early in the morning, and you don't like running 2 miles before it's even light, even before you get to eat, stuff like that. But and along with your PT, but yeah, it's just the fact that you end up respecting yourself and a little more, and at the same time respecting those that have trained you.
Yeah, that was kind of a common theme. Like for myself, I haven't been in the army, but I went through depot with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So it's paramilitary.
Right.
You live on base,
Mm-hmm.
and they make you do stuff. It's like you're in bed at 11 p.m., you're up at 4 a.m. every single day. And yeah, some of the things that they make you do might seem insane. You're like, how the hell is this related to anything? But when you get into like the really bad situations, for us in the policing world, like out on the street, that's when you really appreciate it. And you're like, that one time where it really counts, that's when you're like, wow, I'm glad they made me do all these crazy things, because I know what this feels like. I also know my limits. So I think it's hard for people to see in the time, but especially when you look backward and reflect on it, that's where you really see, you're like, oh wow, like that drill instructor really kicked my ass, but it was all worth it for this one moment.
Exactly. Yeah, same thing. I recall one time in Vietnam, we were really hungry. We hadn't had any food for a while, and when we finally did get some food, we were in a position where really needed to keep security. I needed my perimeter to stay strong. So I didn't need people willy-nilly coming over and jumping into the C ration boxes,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember times when their food would be right there, but you're not eating until they say you're eating. Uh, Anyhow, just little things like that can help.
Yeah. If we're kind of moving up to where you're deploying to Vietnam, can you talk about getting those orders, those deployment orders, and what your thought process is around that time? Like, is it, maybe it's finally hitting you like, wow, this is real.
What have I done?
We're going over there now. Yeah, what am I doing? So can you just talk about getting those orders and what deployment looks like, your thoughts around it?
Well, before we even got the orders, there was an old wives' tale running around that if the Army gave you green underwear, you were going to Vietnam. But we had green underwear right off the bat in infantry training. But then, as other units around you graduated, and you would talk to them, and they 99% of them were going to Vietnam, which is exactly what happened to my unit. I think we had 212 of us, and there's 211 got orders for Vietnam. The only reason that the other one didn't was due to the fact that he had a brother over there. He was an only child, so
Okay.
or the only living. Yeah.
What about you, your own personal situation? Did you, like, when you get the orders, what do you tell your parents, and what are they kind of saying?
Well, wasn't good for my mother. I
Hmm.
can tell you, having dealt with my father. Well, he didn't know him until after World War II. Then he went over to Korea, so she dealt with that also. But yeah, it wasn't really that big of a deal until to the airport, and just she didn't want to let go of me. She just was in my arms crying and would not let me go. They literally,
Hmm.
they had to come over and tell her, "Hey, we're closing the doors on this airplane. You got to let this guy go." But
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine that
yeah,
that's definitely tough.
that's that that story played out, I'm sure, thousands of times. But
Hmm. So you go off to Vietnam. Now you're over there. We're in '68. So we're kind of in the thick of things. Can you tell us about you get over there, and do you instantly you go straight to this River Raiders, or do you have anything in between landing and, like, do you have any other places that you end up with, any other units?
interestingly enough, we all had orders for a specific division or specific unit. My orders were for the 4th Infantry. However, the Army put you in a holding depot, and every morning and afternoon they would call off your name, and you'd either get on the bus and go somewhere or you wouldn't. But the 9th Infantry Division had just suffered some losses. They needed to refill the ranks, and so that's why I ended up going.
Okay. With that unit, can you explain a bit? Well, maybe we'll just get you to explain what exactly you do when you're there, just so listeners kind of have an idea of that.
Well, you don't have any idea even then what unit you're going to, i.e., what brigade or what battalion. But so you're holding once again once you get to your division's base camp. In my case, it was
Oh,
a place called Dongtam down in Mekong Delta. And pretty soon I found out that I was going to be part of the Mobile Riverine Force, and thusly a River Raider.
mm,
Uh, at first, I thought that was a pretty slick idea. I thought that's a pretty slick idea that I'd be living on a ship, but reality was that actually backfired. You actually you spent more time in the field because of the ship. Um, so.
why is that? Like, you just don't want to be on the ship, or just because it's constantly going and you have to deploy?
Oh no, it had to do really with the fact that most base camps. Let's take your average base camp. Let's say a battalion size. You're going to have one platoon stay back at all times for a perimeter defense.
Okay.
and the other three or at one company, and then the other three companies would be out working. So you're going to get a week off, basically, every 3 weeks. With us, we didn't have anybody protecting the perimeter, so we only came in because we had to get rid of some ringworm and immersion foot,
Oh, really? Yeah.
and be a 12-hour cycle, and you had to wear thongs to make sure your feet got dry.
Hmm.
They wouldn't let you wear anything else. So yeah, you'd come in and you get a good night's sleep. I'll say that for it. But you spent more time out in the field due to it.
So Ed, what was the idea behind, or what was the mission of the Riverine Force? Because I remember from the book, you guys were like sleeping on boats, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Well, you slept on a boat
Right.
once every 4 or 5 days. You get 12 hours on the boat.
Okay. And then, so what was the Riverine Force? What was the mission of the Riverine Force? You're talking about, in the field. I mean, what were you guys doing? I mean, what were soldiers doing, hanging out with boats and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, it gave us the opportunity to get down into really the nastiest part of all of Vietnam. There's no roads down where we were at. My battalion didn't even own a Jeep.
Oh, wow.
So, that was the whole idea of being down there. But our job was the same as any other infantryman. We're hunting the enemy. Just
Right.
day in and day out, just as ruthless as you could be.
Now, you at this time was David Hackworth the battalion commander?
Correct, he was. In fact, I
Okay.
was with his battalion for a very short period of time.
Okay, but yeah, since you were talking about operating in the Mekong Delta, I just wanted to share with everybody a quote from the late Colonel Hackworth
Mhm.
from his memoirs about Face, to kind of give you an idea of what Ed and his comrades were putting up with. And what Hackworth said was, quote, "I am convinced that no American soldier has ever suffered more than the infantrymen who fought in the Mekong Delta during the Vietnam War, and that includes those at Valley Forge, the Bulge of Christmas 1944, and Korea, the winter of 50. It was a horrible place." End quote.
Yeah, well, that it was. He wasn't wrong there. As far as being worse than any other place.
Yeah. You were talking about ringworm, trench foot, you said? Or what was it called?
Yeah, immersion foot.
Immersion foot, I think they used to call it.
Immersion foot.
We also had jungle rot, leeches, and mosquitoes. So
Man.
it was a fun deal.
Yeah, that's one of the things we asked the other guest who'd done a tour there, and was the other predators out there. So not just the enemy, the human element, but he was talking a lot about tigers. There was a bunch of stories about Marines getting picked off by tigers in one of the bases he was in. They had claymores set up around it, and a tiger stepped on one. I think last year when I talked to John's friend Keith Cunningham, he was talking about snakes. So I was like, just a horrible part of the world to be in. Just everything is there to kill you. Like nothing is good.
Oh, thank God we didn't have any tigers down where we were at.
Mm-hmm.
We did have snakes, though.
Do you have any run-ins with anything like that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you would. But we never had anybody got bit or anything like that. We have no idea what the hell kind of snakes they were. They had some pretty weird colors going on. The one snake that actually kind of bothered me was the sea snakes. They would get confused and they would come in on the tide. 20 miles inland, you'd see sea snakes.
Hmm.
And the visibility would be so bad in that Mekong River that they would swim with their head above the water.
Oh.
And swim kind of like a Loch Ness or something. They were damn big fish. We had one try to get on our Navy boat that was giving us a ride. He wanted to get on our boat. We didn't want him on there. But, He just must have been a 12-footer.
Oh, damn. Can you talk about just some of the deployments, and then maybe we get into your story, the one that you had featured on a number of different shows. You talked about on a couple of podcasts as well. So can you tell us about some of the deployments that you were on?
Well, deployment, that was my deployment, was Vietnam.
Hmm.
That's but as far as my employment, there, it was a variety of things. While I was with my infantry units, like I said, we really were hunting you down, is what it amounted to. And we might do, in fact, I remember counting. We had right around 11 helicopter insertions in one friggin' day.
Wow.
And you just go into the wood line. You didn't see any sign of the enemy. Nobody shot at you. Get back on the helicopters, and you're going to stay out until you find some action. So that was always a little frustrating, But we had plenty of air assets, and then of course we had the Navy. So they would insert us early in the morning when they didn't want they didn't want to make mass insertions at night. So we'd use the Navy boats to take us up the rivers, and then the rest of the day we'd use the helicopters to disperse us. But as a sniper, was a whole different deal, of course.
So now, before you went to sniper school, you got out of the RTO bit. You didn't want to be a radio telephone operator anymore. You volunteered to carry the M79 as a grenadier.
Roger.
Oh, what prompted that?
Well, I didn't want the M79 either. I had an understanding as squad leader. I told him I wanted to I wanted to be a little freer. I wanted to be able to move faster. I wanted to be more like I wanted to be a rifleman,
Right.
And the problem with the way we use grenadiers is we use them as slack. So usually the first three people would be the point man, a grenadier, and then a machine gun.
So for the listeners, flak is like the next man in line in the formation.
Correct.
Yeah.
But you're learning to be a point man at the same time. You're following that guy. One of the advantages of having a grenadier up close like that was when he fired his HE round at the enemy, it gave those behind a better idea of where the enemy is at. But it also is effective a weapon, especially psychologically. Anyhow, so I'm packing all these damn shells around. It was worse than the radio, to be honest with you.
Right.
But an interesting function. And then after that, they put me on point, and I really went from point to squad leader to platoon sergeant.
Wow.
Platoon sergeant to acting platoon leader. So it didn't take long. Just really due to attrition, you're going to move up.
And then I always liked in your book how you referred to your job as point man as the human mind detector.
Yeah, pretty much the right thing. We lost a lot of guys due to booby traps, and
so from what I remember, from going from RTO to grenadier to point man, that was like all within your first 3 months in Vietnam.
Exactly. Yeah, it was early on, and then when I was made squad leader, it was by vote of the men.
Wow,
which surprised me. That's not how the Army does it. So here I am, a squad leader, still wearing PFC stripes, and I have a sergeant underneath me. So it was kind of a weird deal at first, but I don't think I even wore E4 stripes. I went from E3 to E5 pretty much in one big jump. But so now it was only a matter of time. My squad leader moved up to platoon sergeant, and then one thing led to another, and through attrition, once again, here I am. I'm a platoon sergeant. So.
Wow.
So from there, what did you end up kind of? Can you tell us about some of the stuff you got into, and maybe even some of the people that were with you? Anybody that kind of stood out or is memorable from this time?
Oh, we had plenty of people that stood out,
Yeah.
both good and bad, but mostly good. I was very fortunate in following a man by the name of Larry Reed. He was a Texan, very slow and deliberate in his manners, but one true hero. He led by example, and he believed that if you got the edge on the enemy, you charged him full bore, run him down like a dog, and so I think that benefited me to some extent. Um, Larry, in fact, if you read my book, was the guy that stayed down in the bottom hole of the USS Westchester when they blew that up on us. He was the one that stayed down there and helped getting men out. In fact, he earned the Soldier's Medal, which is the highest non-combat medal you can earn.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you learn from each one of them. You have good lieutenants, bad lieutenants. But overall, the platoon sergeants pretty much ran the platoon. Platoon leaders, it would take a while for them to grow into their position. Most of them haven't seen any combat either,
Yeah.
So, but great people, great friends. I still go to my reunion. We have a great bunch of guys that show up every other year. So.
Did you have many people with you that had any kind of combat experience in general? Like even Korea would be a little ways back, but maybe somebody from that time period?
By the time I got to Vietnam, these guys were seasoned troops that I was working with. We had guys that was my first mission. It was some guys that was their last mission.
Yeah.
So we had, the new guy was really the exception. Unlike the poor bastards that went over as an entire company and not one of them knew what the hell they were doing. Those were the guys I felt sorry for.
Mm. For yourself, can you kind of tell us about your function there? You're saying you guys are kind of like the ones going out and picking the fight, like you're going out and hunting for the enemy. Was that the entire time you were over there, or did that function ever change for you?
No, it never changed. I mean, after all, that's your job. You're an infantryman. You're not a cook or a truck driver.
Mm-hmm.
Your job is to go kick the doors in, and call names.
Yeah.
They gave us plenty of assets to do exactly that. So, it's frustrating at times. You'd get worn out. And sometimes your morale would really be low after a few of you got killed.
Mm-hmm.
But we always found a way to rally, and it always seemed like my battalion commander had a little bit of an idea when we might need a day break, or we had one way that we had for breaks is we had artillery that was on pontoons, and these pontoons would be drug around by Navy boats close to where the infantrymen were working, within the range of the gun, which would be 105. But mainly, we would always put them on these small islands within the river system. So we would go in and we would clear the island and make sure it was safe. And then here would come the artillery people, blah, blah, and we'd set up a kind of a semicircle defense. But at that point, we were really relaxed and felt pretty safe. We even were allowed to get some beer sent to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all good. They might even get some lurp rations, which were always a nice change from C rations.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for the listeners, the LARP rations were the first freeze dried rations. So instead of the C rations that came in cans, these were like freeze dried in plastic bags, and you would just add water, let it soak in for a while, and basically it would reconstitute. They Some of them were actually pretty good.
Yeah, they were. I used to fight for spaghetti.
Yeah, yeah.
We couldn't really eat. We couldn't. We couldn't keep down solid food down in the field. So you never ate a solid meal either.
What?
So your daily rations would be like peaches, pound cakes, and crackers. But you couldn't eat like a spaghetti or a meatloaf or a ham and lima beans or what the hell ever it was. You couldn't keep it down.
Why is that though? Like, are you just too dehydrated, or are you too on the go, or?
Oh, just too damn hot out, and you're working your rear off.
Just the exertion.
I would go through an entire mission, 3-4 days, without ever urinating.
Yeah.
You might wake up in the morning feeling your bladder feeling a little full. By noon, it wasn't full any longer. Somehow or another, your body had reabsorbed that moisture.
Well, what was your rate of, I guess, insertions or whatever you might call it? Like, how often are you dropping into the front lines?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, as many as close to a dozen times a day. I think we probably average 6 insertions a day, something like that.
And that's sustained over the whole time?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean,
Wow.
There would be days when you stay in one area, you would just walk all day long, for example. But a lot of it was just being dropped off and then securing an LZ for the choppers to come in again, and off you go to find something else. If there wasn't anybody to fight, there's no sense of staying there.
Mm-hmm.
At least that was in the eyes of our general, anyhow.
Well, maybe we'll get into your story about that's been featured on some of the shows and you've talked about on other podcasts.
Well, before we, so if you could just go over, how did you wind up? So you're the platoon sergeant. Or acting as the platoon sergeant, how did you wind up going to sniper school?
Yeah, I just saw a flyer one day, a flyer on the bulletin board, looking for sniper, people to volunteer for sniper school. And I went to my company commander, and he was under the impression that I'd go away for training and then I'd come back to the same unit, So he was just thinking I was going to go away, get some training, and come back, and it'd be training that would be beneficial to the whole.
Right.
He didn't really know how they were going to employ us later, but anyhow, that's how that all happened.
So you volunteer for sniper school, and you wind up going there. And if you could just briefly cover, because memory serves me correctly, back then it was a 3-week course, and so what was the training for that? Was it mostly shooting? Did you go into field? Because I think to attend the sniper school, you had to have a certain amount of time in country. Were they
Correct.
were they covering field craft, or was it primarily on the sniper rifle?
Yeah, and you're right there. We were all infantrymen and had been for periods of time. So they would take like 35 of us. They'd give us one day of instruction on open sites, and then the very next day they'd have a shoot off, and they'd just keep the 10 best shots and then send everybody else home. And with the whole purpose of keeping those 10 people passing. So very frustrating. I was the high scorer with open sights. 300 meters is what we're shooting at. And lo and behold, as you well know, John, I ended up flunking out of sniper school the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I missed. Well, part of the final test was you needed to hit your 900-meter target 3 out of 5 times, and I hit it 2 out of 5. I had, to be honest with you, the windage was. I was holding 3.5 silhouettes off to the right.
Yeah.
That's fairly decent wind. Anyhow, that's how that went down. And it wasn't until later that I got the opportunity to go back through it. But in the sniper training itself, we pretty much just dealt with marksmanship, and the reason was they felt like we already understood camouflage.
Right.
We already understood how to call in artillery, even though we would go over that. We had an afternoon of blowing a bunch of stuff up outside the perimeter, just for the fun of it. But I was pretty impressed with their understanding of who we were and what we were capable of. So it was pretty much just making us better shots and understanding, the workings of the starlight scope and the daytime art scope, those types of things. And we'd have night classes every night. We'd have a class of some sort. Yeah, I think for what they had to work with, they did a great job. These guys were actually all members of the Army Marksmanship Unit, and they were the ones tasked with writing the very first sniper school program and instructing it. So
so you were issued the M21 rifle with the art scope,
correct, and the starlight scope, yeah,
right. And for the listeners, the M21 was it was a national match accurized M14 rifle. Basically, the action was glassed into the stock. There was some machining work on it, and the art scope is the really fascinating part. Just real briefly, one of the reasons why the sniper school could be as short as it was art stood for automatic ranging telescope. And picture, if you will, it was a 3x9 variable scope. So you turn the back of it just like a regular scope, and it would go from 3 power to 9 power. And inside on the reticle, there were a couple of tick marks or stadia lines. And basically they represented 30 inches, which was supposed to be from the top of the head to the belt line of a target. And there was a cam. Basically the Limited Warfare Laboratory in inventing this, there was a cam that they added to the scope. So when you change the power, the target gets bigger and smaller to fit inside those lines. And then the cam at the back would raise and lower it would tilt the scope up and down to adjust for the trajectory. So you were taught that you see somebody downrange, you have no idea how far away they are. You turn the scope until he fits inside the tick marks on the reticle, and then your scope is automatically set ballistically to hit this guy when you shoot at him. So basically, the only thing you had to worry about was the windage. So that was Army sniping in 1969.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's pretty ingenious, though. I mean,
yeah, it really was.
Oh, just in the interest of full disclosure, we've mentioned Ed's book a number of times. Just so everybody in the audience knows, when Ed was writing the book, I was helping him with some of the research on it. So if you do get his book, and I recommend you do, you are going to find my name credited in there for some of the stuff that I was able to dig up for him. So that's
correct. Yeah. Yeah. I was was really lucky writing that book. I never wrote that book for it to be a book, so it's kind of a strange.
Yeah, the Starlight scope, even though they're common today, this was like a secret item back in Vietnam. And as you know, just like any kind of image intensifier, it amplified the available light thousands of times. But this was like a first generation. There's a first generation night vision device, and you can buy like fourth generation on Amazon, I believe. But
Yeah.
it plays an important part in its story later on. But the thing is, it's like this is definitely 1960s technology. It was a 4-power scope. Um, it weighed about 6 pounds, and in 2023 dollars, back then it cost the equivalent of $8,673.
Holy.
So yeah, so you can contrast that with you know all you got to do is just look up a night vision scope on Amazon or Cabela's or something like that, just to see how far things have come.
Yeah, it truly was. Yeah, we were instructed that if we had to leave our Starlight scope to destroy it. They did not want that in the enemy's hands at all.
Yeah, and I think if people, I'll post some links after we post this podcast, and people can see the video. I think I watched it on military.com. They had your story on there, and there's a whole explanation on the scope. It kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like maybe when you're looking through it, how it amplifies the light, and just how it helped in your situation. So maybe it's a good place we'll kind of jump into that story. The only thing, maybe if you could add to it though, is nowhere could I find where exactly in your time in Vietnam that this occurred. Like if it was at the beginning or the end or in the middle somewhere. You could kind of start there and then just kind of tell us about this night.
April 3rd, 1969.
Yeah.
So you're the historian.
So, well, yeah, just by the date alone, I was there in the fall of '68, so it was I'd been there a while. But at any rate, so it's kind of a convoluted story because there's different things that happen. I wasn't a full-time sniper then, but I had a sniper rifle that the sniper school gave me. And I was on a night mission while I was still a platoon sergeant. And the change of events that occurred that night is very complicated. And at the same time, that's what made the night so, the way it was. But we're on a night mission, and I'm going to be short on this. If you really want to know the real story, you can either go to YouTube or you can go to my book, either one, but
yeah,
a little more complete. But at any rate, so we were tasked with a night mission, came down from battalion, and my company commander normally would have tasked a well-seasoned lieutenant to lead it. This time he decided to do it himself. And Mike was the ex-Special Forces guy. In fact, he built Lang Bay. But he came to me and wanted me to go with him. So I had one team, he had another. And away we went. And somewhere around midnight, we landed in this rice paddy, and it's just one of the nastiest rice paddies I'd ever been in. It was like the mud was an extra 6 inches deep, and there's another foot of water. So you were just really pulling up big clouds of peanut butter on your leg every time you took a step, which made for our going a little slow. So we weren't able to completely check this area out that we were wanting to deal with. And for one reason to another, just the choppers are running low on fuel. Blah blah. We configured and got into a wood line, and as we were leaving, one of the guys jumped off, and we had to go back to pick him up. And but as we were leaving, we came under heavy fire, and which is where the one person jumped off, and the Cobras pretty much unloaded their wad at everything, doing a pretty good job of keeping them off our back. And we got in the air, and then we realized we had a member of the team that was down there still. So going back into it, the helicopter I was in got shot down, and a pretty vicious roll. It was low altitude, but we had speed, and so it pitched to the right, and it rolled and threw some people out, threw all of our weapons out into this deep, muddy field, ripped the ammo off the machine guns, and so anyhow, so we had lots of people with broken bones, pilot shot, things like that. My company commander was stuck underneath. I rode back with him instead of with my unit. I shouldn't have done that, to be honest with you. But he was stuck underneath the helicopter. So after we got everybody out of it, we put the work rock in the helicopter and we got him out. But we were still receiving fire, and so I couldn't find a weapon or nothing, and so I jumped on top of the helicopter, trying to get the M60, the door gunner's M60, to work, and it wasn't. In fact, and I realized it didn't have any ammo. That whole ammo box and belt had been ripped off and thrown out into the rice paddy somewhere. But the door gunner managed to start throwing up M16s, and he finally found my sniper scope, or my sniper rifle. So I was alternating between the M16 and the sniper rifle, dealing with these guys. I didn't have any 16 rounds, so I would throw it back down. He'd get a magazine from somebody, throw it back up. But, and using my night scope, I wasn't hitting a damn thing. My stock was busted. Found out later, that my scope was askew. But I kept on firing at him anyhow, because I was using that to identify locations. So, and then I would fire around, and I'd dump off a magazine of M16s at him or whatever. So that went on for a while, and then I finally actually saw a kind of a reflection where my round had hit, off to the side and below the person I was shooting at. So that gave me a pretty good idea where my round was going, and as such, I was able to just use basic Kentucky windage to zero in on them, and then at that point, my sniper rifle became effective, and that's, I think, what really turned the tide of the battle. But so anyhow, that's kind of how that went down, and so people come back. They finally realized, we changed frequencies and everything. The mission's over with. The Cobras are gone. The colonel's gone, and his helicopter, and it's just us two guys, two helicopters with what we had, and so we can't get them all on one helicopter, obviously. But anyhow, Colonel Peterson, he came back, and he came back with the Cobras, even that didn't have. They didn't have any rounds left, really. But so everybody got on the choppers except for me and Mike. At least I thought that's what the deal was. But we had a couple of the guys hiding behind the downed helicopter. But, so at any rate, we finally get Mike out of there, and I'm left alone in the rice paddy, except for Vietnamese Tiger Scout. He's out there with me. I'm, I'm thinking, God, I'll never get rescued. But so Cobra comes down, and we jump on the outside of the Cobra, and Cobra takes me to the middle of high heaven. I have no idea where, and tells me to jump off, and I couldn't even see the ground. I know he's not on the ground. He's hovering. Finally, he popped the canopy and told me to get the F off of his helicopter. And so I jumped, which was probably all of 3 or 4 feet. But by that time, now I can't even walk. I literally can't walk, and the adrenaline had worn off. And so now I hear Vietnamese talking from outside of the area. We finally realized, though, that they were Arvins. What they had done was drop me off close to an Arvin encampment. So that's basically it. There's a lot more details to it. Like I said, you can go to YouTube, or actually you can get all the films on my website at edthesniper.com.
Yeah.
We'll link you right in. Yeah.
I'll be sure to put up the link so people can find that. I highly recommend it. And you came out of that with a bunch of injuries. I think everybody ended up with a whole whack load of injuries.
Yeah. It was it beat us up. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, because Captain Perkins suffered a broken back.
Mm-hmm.
and hip. Yeah, I suffered a broken back. Didn't know it until later. But my right glutes maximus was 100% contused. It hung out like 4 inches further than the other bun.
Oh, really?
That was part of why I was having a difficult time walking. But I had some shrapnel in my jaw, and the nick, a bullet nick. So I was pretty lucky. It just took me a while to get back to hobbling around. And I felt pretty good at that point. Actually, years later, I found out it broke my neck also.
Oh,
but
it took years.
Yeah, I finally started losing some feeling in one arm, and they gave me an MRI and realized that my neck had been broken. And in fact, it had squeezed my spinal cord down to less than 2 millimeters wide, and even split it in two. But at any rate, that's a whole different story.
Wow. Well, did you find, was that the end of your time in Vietnam? Or did you have a long recovery period from that?
I had a couple of weeks before I could walk. And so when I did, I went back to the company area to see the guys. I had a 90-day profile. I was excused from 90 days of being with my unit. 90 days of humping in the boonies, and I didn't have to do anything for 3 months other than just sit back and enjoy an NCO club if I could find one. But at any rate, they were having problems, attrition, and a couple of guys came to me begging me, "Hey, Ed, we really need you. We don't, had like 2 lieutenants." And so I went ahead and started going back out into the field again.
Wow.
Why, I really don't know. But,
yeah, because basically it was 30 days into his 90-day profile. He went back.
Yeah.
He started going back to the bush.
Jeez.
Yeah.
How much longer did you do there?
Well, my unit, just the 9th Infantry Division, was tasked with the first people to bring home flags. My battalion was chosen to be the first battalion to go back home, take their flags actually back home, which is quite an honor. So that happened in July of '69. And but then I got bounced around to different battalions. And the Army really didn't know what the hell to do with me. They sent some of the snipers up to the 25th Infantry Division, using them as instructors. And so at any rate, I ended up pulling the rest of my tour with different units. But my heart was with the 60th down in the Delta.
Well, how much longer is your military career after this?
Oh, I got out of the Army the day I got home.
Oh, okay.
They probably didn't want me by then anyhow.
Since you've been retired from that, can you talk a little bit about leaving the army, what the transition back to civilian life was like, and maybe we'll get into some of the stuff that you've been up to since.
I'll never forget when that jet got high enough altitude outside of Tonsanut that I felt we were safe from what was below. And it was like winning the lottery. I never felt so wealthy. So it was just an incredible feeling that stayed with me all the way to home. I'm realizing for the first time I can do anything, be anything. I'm realizing what I'd went through and what I could be capable of. But that was short, unfortunately. You get home and you find out that things have changed. You've changed. They've changed. Um, the whole country had changed. Really, it became pretty anti-Vietnam by then. But so yeah, it was a little difficult. I tried to go back to college. Um, Ended up spending more times in the bar than I did in the classroom. But a bunch of us Vietnam veterans decided we had a Vietnam Veterans Club. Both of us had early lunch off there at the school, but we decided that we'd start holding classes at the bar.
Hmm.
Or meetings at the bar. So that pretty well did it for a few of us. Yeah, it was a little frustrating. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask about the part where you're saying you came back and there was a lot of the anti-war sentiment. Did you deal with any of that in your own life, or is this more just you seeing on the stuff you see on the TV and the news?
Yeah, I dealt with a little bit of it. I was fortunate enough to be in small town USA. Spent most of, Walla Walla, Washington, Hamilton, Oregon. That whole area there was my home area. But still, I think I wrote about in the book about this. I was with some buddies and we're going out to chase some skirt, and one of the guys says, "Hey, yeah, don't be talking about Vietnam tonight, or we're not going to get laid." And I remember it just shook me. It shook me to the bone of like, what the fuck, Excuse my cut that out, I guess, can't you?
Oh, that's fine.
It's just like, what the hell's going on here?
Hmm.
I'm the same old guy. How would they look at me differently? But so yeah, I had a few things like that. I had a few people get in my face even. One actually wanted to fight over what the hell you think you're doing.
You contrast that with the experience of the people at that time, people's fathers and uncles that had come back from World War II, and there were celebratory parades, and Hollywood was pumping out movies of the exploits of the armed forces in World War II, and it can best be summed up by the author B.G. Burkett in his book Stolen Valor, when he said that the Vietnam generation wasn't allowed to have any heroes.
Yeah.
There were, not all, um, but a lot of the people that served in combat arms in Vietnam, I mean, they wound up being drafted, and then all of a sudden it's like come back and some window licker wants to pick a fight with you on basically it's like, how dare you come back alive from Vietnam.
Hmm.
And you know but it was the one thing I do want to say at this point, and I don't know if Ed wants to get into it, but it's like you look at Ken Burns's Vietnam documentary, and he here's a real good example. I mean, three-quarters of it is dealing with the anti-war movement and the Vietnam veterans against the war that were like cheering as the North Vietnamese finally conquered South Vietnam. And Ed probably wouldn't mention that to anybody, but I'll just say it on his behalf. His story, he was interviewed by Ken Burns, and rather than tell his story, okay, basically it's like that one wound up on the cutting room floor, and instead they were talking about peace marches on Washington, and like I said, Vietnam veterans that were cheering that Ho Chi, that uh, the North Vietnamese, drove their tanks into the South Vietnam capital. Okay, so it was one of these deals. You know, whatever reasons that Vietnam happened, the grunts that were actually executing the war didn't deserve the reception that they got coming back. That was, that was just my 2 cents.
Yeah, it could be a frustrating deal for sure. Um, and all I really want to do is get my uniform off and start looking like a civilian as soon as I could. My father said, "How come you got rid of your uniform?" He says, I kept mine on I kept my Marine Corps uniform on until it rotted off." He says it was good for all kinds of dates and free beers. That don't work anymore, Dad.
Right?
Yeah, it's quite the contrast, right? And yeah, I hear what you're saying there, John. Like it's just like all the politics come into it, and it's not about the people that they sent anymore, and some of the narratives change. So all of a sudden, you got a totally different sentiment when people return, and they're over there kind of unaware or oblivious to what's even going on at home to the full degree.
Yeah. I mean, you're seeing the same thing nowadays, and then shortly after that, then it was a case of, uh, you know, the military wasn't cool anymore, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, this happens in the world, and 9/11 happens. All of a sudden, it's like it was, you know, oh wow, where's our military? I mean, it's the same thing. You see the same thing with police, with the whole defund the very clever defund the police
Hmm.
movement, and everything else. And then all of a sudden, it's like mayors and councilmen start getting carjacked and everything, and they're like, "Geez,
Yep.
what can we do for you all? What can we do for the police administration?" So,
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're 100% on point there.
but now, so Ed, you got back and you wrote about your struggles with PTSD, and what was that like for you?
Well, I never really, and of course, we didn't even know it. They didn't even have a name for it, I don't think, early on.
Right.
But really the first time I understood that I was having a real problem dealing with civilian life, um, I was just, I had I was having anxiety attacks, if you will. And it just really bothered me. And I got it, I grabbed a couple other vets and talked to them about it. And basically the downstroke was, well, you just got to live with it. It'll get easier, da, 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 I actually went down to a recruiter that afternoon and decided I was going back in.
Wow.
At least I'd hang around people that would appreciate me. And anyhow, fortunately by then I had a cavity and, and that they would fix. So anyhow, that all went down. But, and you don't really realize how it affects you until you look back on it.
Right.
I ran through women like crazy. I just, you know, I found a great deal of solace in alcohol and women. You know? It was that's all I look forward to every day. Go out and get halfway screwed up and hopefully screwed. But,
Well, as therapy goes, I mean, there's worse approaches. So
yeah, I'm sure there is. But I've been pretty fortunate in a lot of ways. I think my reunions helped a lot. Going back to Vietnam helped. But I was a lucky guy. I go to my reunions and nobody said, Ed, if you would have had us take a left instead of a right, so and so would be alive, or
right.
Any of that kind of stuff. Um, I didn't have those kind of accidents. I did lose men, of course, but I'm pretty lucky there. I can keep my head up.
Mm.
I've talked to some of the guys in my platoon that would come to the reunions, and I was like, "Oh, why won't you come to the reunion?" It's like, "Well, I'm embarrassed. I wasn't worth a damn. I wasn't a very good soldier, or, that kind of thing." So I kind of feel sorry for those guys.
Now, you mentioned going back to Vietnam. What prompted you to do that?
Prompted me to do what?
To go back to Vietnam. Sorry. Yeah, you mentioned that you went
Oh,
back to Vietnam. So what was
In 94?
correct. Yeah, 94. I didn't want to go back, to be very honest with you. My platoon leader, one of them, decided he was going back and that I was going with him. He couldn't go back without his platoon sergeant, was his statement. I just really thought he was screwing with me till I got the airline tickets in the mail.
wow.
I'm thinking of all kinds of. I didn't sleep for days. Now all kinds of things are going through my mind. So I just thought I'd just gonna tell them all I was a medic. At any rate, it turned out being a life changing thing for me. Back then, you couldn't even get a visa from the United States. We had to go to Mexico or Canada to get visas. But so anytime you went anywhere, you had to deal with the military. And just getting there, we had to sit down with the military, including a general. And then going down into the Delta, before we could cross the first river, we had to deal with 4 or 5, two colonels. And then to get across then we finally get across the way into our old neighborhood. And lo and behold, a general's there to meet us, General V. And but it was a little difficult at first, but finding out that they treated the men as well as they do was a big surprise to me. And I actually asked the general one. I said, "Why? Why is it you guys treat us so well now?" And he goes, "Well, he says we thought great things of you people. You went out of your way to not kill women and children, um, as opposed to everything, what they've been through before. So we don't hate you. What we hate is your government."
Mm.
And I got to thinking, well, there were times I hated it too. So
You say you have a video,
yeah.
kind of a little clip of the trip that I want to say was like through. I don't know. It might have been about 10 minutes that I found, and just some of the stuff the general said to you.
It's pretty short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd recommend people watch that.
When we went back, we went to a battle site, and I didn't care to go over that. That's where I lost my best friend. So I'm playing with the children, teaching them stupid little magic tricks and whatever you can with it. So as we got ready to leave on our boat, here's all these children running down the side of the river, waving at me. So I'm sitting there at the bow of the boat with Sergeant Ed Zeke, who was with me, and General V comes up, puts his hand on my leg as they do in a non-gay way. That's he said, I've been wanting to tell Americans this for a very long time. He said, I fought since I was a child, and we had the Japanese and the this and that. He says, I've been in war all my life. But he says, you Americans are the best. And I know for a fact you went out of your way to save women and children at your own expense. And, that was just, I just wanted to fucking grab Jane Fonda and John Kerry and, put them there with me. But, at any rate, we ended up being pretty good friends. I would supply him with fishing gear for the next few years. But yeah, that statement alone made me feel good. So
Yeah, I'm sure that went a long way towards healing.
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, yeah, it's kind of different. I asked a soldier one time. I said, "How come you guys?" I have a lot of them. How come you guys like us so? But you guys are the only ones that understand. He says. He says the kids today. He's talking about the kids in Vietnam. They don't understand. They're too young. Go figure.
And maybe some, I guess, on some other good news, you were also inducted to the Army Sniper Hall of Fame. Can you talk about that process?
Yeah, what an honor. It kind of took me by surprise. The Army kind of got a hold of me a few years back, and I spoke at a international sniper competition and a few things like that. Got to know a few of those guys. And then through AmericanSnipers.org, we supplied active duty snipers with gear. And so I started dealing directly with the sniper school as far as vetting the people that we were supporting. And but at any rate, they gave me a call one day and they said, "Hey, we're going to name the sniper classroom after you."
Oh, nice.
And I'm thinking, geez, there's people out there I would think that deserve it more, and especially when it comes to numbers, because I don't have the high numbers. But excuse me. Anyhow, so you get there in Fort Benning, and it's quite the hoopla. The general's there with all of his colonels, and it's the first day of the International Sniper Comp, so all the foreigners got to enjoy that stuff. So we go over to the sniper school and we do a little ribbon cutting, and I go inside and here's a whole bunch of my shit. There's my uniform and different pictures in the corner of that room, and that's when they said, and by the way, you're the first inductee into the Sniper Hall of Fame. So,
Wow.
Yeah, what a beautiful surprise. Huh?
And well deserved, no matter what you might say, Ed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I hope to see a lot more people here shortly. So, I don't like being the only one in there.
Well, I don't think there'll be any shortage of conflict for people to be involved in. That's for sure. But you said they had your uniform, and did they have your rifle or any part of it?
No, they had another M14 though.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I donated my uniform to them. I knew that they wanted some stuff, and I thought it'd be they just put it up on the wall of the Eaton sniper classroom, not realizing what they're really truly going to do with it.
Wow.
But nice little. In fact, I actually on my website, you can go to Hall of Fame, and there's some pictures there that describe it a whole lot better than I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had some old unit patches, and stuff like that. It actually took up about 10 feet of the wall. Pretty crazy.
And maybe one other thing I want to make sure we get in here, just we kind of come up to the end of our time. I wanted to ask about the Medal of Honor recommendation for you. So, because I saw on your website that you had said you were hoping people would pull their recommendation just because it's causing some stress. Uh, and I'm totally ignorant to the whole process, but I see that you have to be recommended. It has to be supported further through the political side of things. Can you talk a bit about that process and then why or what issues it's causing for people?
Well, the process, and first of all, you got to recognize I stayed as far away from it as I possibly could.
Mm,
What happened was years later, uh, Mike realized I hadn't been honored, but it's still pre-computer era. He didn't know how to find anybody. So, in his mind, it takes two people for a Medal of Honor, and it takes two people for a Distinguished Service Cross. So he puts me in for a Silver Star. Well, the Army, and thinking that the Army would investigate that and find witness, whatever, investigate it, and they would do the right thing by me. Well, instead, the awards board they downgraded it to a Bronze Star and sent it to my house where it's set for a couple of days in the rain. But anyhow, so that didn't happen from that angle. So then once we found people and could, obtain statements and so forth, and I shouldn't say we, once Mike Perkins, um, then he was able to put together a package and present it as a Medal of Honor.
okay.
That started the fight. Then then one of the congressmen took it on, and they really didn't do anything. And then the other congressman took it on; they didn't do anything. They didn't really care. Then my colonel, he took it on, and then about the time he gets ready to pass away, the Army decided, or the congressman decided that he had one guy that wanted to take that on. Well, he got voted out right after that.
Oh,
One mess after another. So I get a hold of Mike and I said, Mike, let's just knock this off. Let's just end it. He says, no. He says, I'm retired. He says, I'm pissed off now as much or more than I ever was. But the biggest problem the Army has had isn't with the testimony; it's with the procedure. So they came up with this new ruling that you can only be upgraded uh, once from any event. So what happened was the Army gave everybody who was on that helicopter wreck got an Army Commendation Medal just for being there, volunteering, and getting wrecked up. Okay, so that's one award. So then the next award is a Bronze Star, the one downgrade from the silver. So now the Army's saying, well, sorry, we can't go forward because he's already been upgraded once. So that's been the fight, and it's a fight that has been won by others. That anyhow, that's what her Mike's knocking his head against is that kind of crap.
Mm. Well, I like at least where he's coming from because he says he's retired. He's got all the time now, so keep fighting the fight.
He's a retired pissed off special forces guy. So I wouldn't want to stand in his way myself.
He was a great guy. He was a great leader. Him and I went out on a couple night missions together. The guys are going like, what the hell? We got a company commander that wants to go out and crawl around in the middle of the night. He was a pretty good guy. And as I mentioned earlier, I think I did. He built Lang Bay. He was tasked with building up the Special Forces encampment Lang Bay up by Ason.
Oh, very nice.
So he'd been around. My colonel had been around. So here I got two guys that have had 5 tours of Vietnam together, both special forces, and their word ain't shit.
Mm.
Yeah.
because of because there's already been one upgrade,
Right.
whatever. Anyhow, I'm tired of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I feel as though I've been honored way beyond already by my men and by my Mike and others. So
Well, and you get to go out and tell your story. So, I mean, that's a blessing in it of itself, right? Yeah.
Oh, he also gets a lot of free stuff too. So when it's yeah, just so you know, I mean, when his story, when his story first came out, it's like, Ed and I were talking, and it was just amazing all the stuff where gun manufacturers are like, "Oh, please, Ed, take this rifle,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
hey, here, try bullets and all this stuff." I'm like, "God damn it, Ed!"
I'm wondering if just because we're right at the end of our time, can you tell us, maybe both of you, tell us how you guys met?
yeah, John and I met at a sniper seminar up in Wisconsin. I believe it was Janesville. Is that correct?
Yes, Janesville, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike Rankus was the organizer, or no, Paul Rankus. Paul Rankus was the organizer, and
Yeah.
I was speaking, and Ed was speaking, and then that's the first time I met him, and it's like we hit it off, and uh, we got to talking, and he said he was working on this book, and I would I would be glad to help him with photos and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and it's kind of funny because the thing is, it's like when I was helping out with Mekong mud dogs, and I'm digging up this stuff on Army sniper training in Vietnam. My son Jason at the time was like, how come you know this guy's up for the Medal of Honor as a sniper? It's like, what does he need you for? And that's why I said, well, his career in the Army was like 2 years. I said, I've been doing this for like, I've been a sniper instructor for like 40 years. So, I help out wherever I can.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I dug up photos, for the book and stuff like that, and I proofread it. And it's like, hopefully we'll be able to put the band back together for an updated edition of the book. We already started talking about that.
Oh, very cool.
The book actually was by accident. I had a Hollywood writer want my story. He kept on bugging me, and finally he says, "Well, I'll get your story from the guys that you served with." And I got to thinking, well, I was already in 5 books, already in 5 different magazines, and every time I was written about, they got something wrong.
Yeah.
But I thought, I'm not taking any chances here. I'm going to write my story down the way it really happened. Well, in doing so, I recruited 4 or 5 guys from my unit, including the snipers and John, to get it done. And then I was talking to my one buddy. I said, "Well, I'm going to have to change some stuff. I don't need to be having my mother read about my time in a whorehouse." And these guys went sideways on me, like, "Don't you dare change a thing. That's just the way it was." And that therein lies, I think, the reason for its success. Is
Mhm.
I got tired of hiding things, and so I couldn't do that. I just had to. I threw all that ideas away, and I just went with the truth.
Yeah.
It worked out pretty good.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me about it is it, you know, Ed is just so incredibly, and you can hear it in this in this interview. I mean, Ed is just so incredibly modest, but he's also more honest than most people that are writing their memoirs. And the one that always jumps out at me, and I debated bringing it up, but it's in the book, one of his motivations for going to sniper school is that, hey, it's a 3-week class, so it's going to get me out of the bush for 3 weeks, and it still counts as time in country. So that's 3 weeks that I'm not going to get shot at or have to
Yeah,
have to sleep have to sleep on the ground.
good point.
And then yeah, and the thing is, it's like, well, yeah, that's on it. That's how soldiers think. Okay, even soldiers that are nominated for nation's highest award for valor.
Hmm.
Okay, and it's like it makes it a very human book. And I was looking up in preparation for this. I was looking up some of the negative reviews on Amazon, and what a bunch of pinheads. Oh well,
I was saying, don't ever read the bad comments.
oh yeah, he was like shirking it, slacking, and all this other stuff, and it's like, well, so it's like, yeah, that's that spoken like a civilian.
Yeah,
Okay, it's
exactly.
like, yeah, but back when everybody else was asleep, he should have put a bandolier of machine gun bullets across his chest and crawl out into the night with a knife in his teeth. And it's like wars are fought by people and not cartoon characters,
Mm.
and that is one of the best lessons that anybody could learn from this book. But all that said, um, between the language and the episodes and the whorehouses and everything, a teacher in a high school civics class really doesn't want to put this out as a reading assignment.
I tell you, one of the highest compliments I received was from a professor. He wrote me a nice little letter, and I wrote him back and thanking him for the kind words. And he says, "Well, obviously, you're not an English professor." He comes back, he goes, "Oh," he says, "Oh, yes, I am." He says, "But anybody that can't see through the small errors of punctuation and editing, um, you know,"
Exactly.
he says, and that's he gave me credit for what I wrote, not for the way it maybe should have been punctuated or
Mhm.
whatever, which is where a lot of people thought it just wasn't the best edited book in the world, but you can get through it no problem.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely, when I get the episode up, I'll throw up some links. Hopefully, some people check it out. And yeah, I guess that kind of brings us to the end of the time here. I want to say thanks to you, Ed, just for obviously the service and putting yourself on the line, and I mean, going through hell and back. But even all the stuff you do after that. So you put out the book. You have some art that you have posted on your website. There's things for people to check out on there. But even just sharing your story, I know it helps other veterans, even up here in Canada. I get messages from people once they listen to the stories. They say, like, yeah, I'm good to come on there and talk now, or share my story of what's happened. So
Sure.
yeah, no, you're doing some good stuff and helping people out. So just as long as you know that.
Well, I love the Canadian Army. I was hitchhiking once from Canada, from Alaska to Washington, and I was in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and along came a Canadian a group of they were managing that dew line back when they had the radar up there.
Mm.
But anyhow, they gave me a ride and let me stay in their barracks at night, fed me, and I was on my way the next day. So it was all cool.
Hey, it's a one big piece of land we're on here, so we're all friends here.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, no, thank you for coming on the show, and I'll get this up here just before Remembrance Day. But yeah, if you can hang on the line for 2 seconds, I'll say bye offline. And thanks to you, John, for hosting all these.
Oh, thank you for asking me. I mean, this has been a pleasure and an honor.